Welcome to the Deep Dive, the place where we take stacks of complicated, dense, and often deeply convoluted source material and extract the absolute core knowledge, the insight, and those aha moments you need.
And today we are doing something really special. We're not just summarizing a mystery.
No, not at all.
We are performing what you could call a forensic dissection of a true masterpiece of intellectual architecture.
A domestic tragedy, right? But one that hinges entirely on these layers of deception and almost microscopic clues.
That's absolutely right. Our sources detail the sudden, violent death of Mrs. Inglethorpe, who's this wealthy matriarchal figure at a place called Styles Court.
And the investigation is just fascinating.
It is, because it presents a crime where the immediate, just overwhelming evidence is, by its very design, flawless.
And also completely false.
Completely false. So we're looking at not just who did it, but the unbelievably sophisticated chemical and psychological engineering that was used to make sure the wrong person took the fall.
So our mission today is clear. We are following the methodology of one Hercule Poirot, the legendary Belgian detective, as he peels back every single one of these layers.
And we're going to analyze the intense family drama that really set the stage.
We'll break down the science of the crime itself, trace the path of every piece of evidence. I mean, everything from a single thread of green fabric to a splash of candle grease.
And ultimately uncover the true conspirators and the, frankly, astonishing method of poisoning they devised.
Okay, let's unpack this. It's a lot.
Right. So to really appreciate the complexity here, we have to first immerse ourselves in the environment.
The actual place where this tragedy unfolded.
Exactly. You can't understand the crime without understanding the pressure cooker that was Styles Court in Essex.
Styles St. Mary, specifically.
Right. And our sources paint this incredibly vivid picture, and we see it all through the eyes of our narrator, Captain Arthur Hastings.
Hastings, yeah. He arrives in early July, and he's just been invalided home from the trenches.
So he's coming directly from the absolute horror of the First World War.
And he describes it so beautifully, you know, the quiet of the English countryside, the warm summer air. He says it felt like another world.
A safe harbor, far away from all the conflict he'd just endured.
But what he finds inside this seemingly peaceful world is, well, it's a high-pressure zone built on money and just pure resentment.
That's the perfect way to put it. And the central figure, the pivot point for all this tension, is Mrs. Inglethorpe.
The matriarch.
She's described as an energetic woman. She has a considerable fortune. She's over 70 years old. And she's known for being autocratic.
A bit of a tyrant.
A bit, yes.
Mm.
And for her social and charitable notoriety. But the key phrase in all our sources is that she possessed the purse strings.
She was the ultimate controller of the wealth in that house. End of story.
And that control was established years and years earlier, which created what our sources call the stepson dilemma.
Right, for John and Lawrence Cavendish.
John is 45. He's a former barrister who's now a country squire. And then there's his younger brother, Lawrence,
who's described as a more delicate youth, right? A failed doctor who's now trying his hand at writing and not very successfully.
Not at all. And both of them are living at Styles, completely, utterly dependent on their generous butt.
But completely controlling a stepmother.
The foundation of this dependency was the will of their deceased father, Mr. Cavendish. He left Styles Court itself and the larger part of his income to his wife, Mrs. Inglethorpe, but only for her lifetime.
Which the family saw as distinctly unfair to the sons.
Massively unfair.
Mm.
John, in particular, is in a really dire financial spot. He actually admits he is damned hard up and at his wit's end for money.
So there you have it. That's the immediate, powerful motive for John to wish his stepmother was gone.
You have the pinder, which is the financial desperation and the resentment.
And then the match gets thrown on the fire when Mrs. Inglethorpe, just 3 months before Hastings even shows up, decides to remarry.
And this marriage is, to put it mildly, not popular.
Enter Alfred Inglethorpe.
The controversial new husband. He is strikingly younger than Mrs. Inglethorpe by at least 20 years.
And John Cavendish does not hold back. He calls him a rotten little bounder.
An absolute outsider. The family consensus is that this is nothing more than barefaced fortune hunting.
And the physical description of Alfred is so important that you don't realize why at first.
No, not at all. He had a great black beard, gold-rimmed pince-nez, and this manner that's sort of a mix of exaggerated deference and a really curious, impassive calm.
He just sounds oily.
Yeah.
Suspicious. To the family, he is instantly the villain of the piece.
And adding another layer of just pure hostility to this mix is Evelyn Howard, Evie.
She's Mrs. Inglethorpe's factotum companion, jack of all trades.
Right, a practical, very brusque woman, about 40, described as having a large, sensible, square body and this very direct, telegraphic style of speaking.
And her hostility towards Alfred is it's immediate. It's completely unconcealed. She does not hide her contempt for him at all.
Not for a second. And then we also have some other players, the outsiders, who might seem incidental at first, but... oh.
But they're anything but.
Exactly. Two key figures here. First, there's Cynthia Murdoch. She's Mrs. Inglethorpe's penniless protege.
And she works in the Red Cross Hospital dispensary about 7 miles away.
Right, at Tedminster. And her job, her daily job, involves handling and dispensing all sorts of chemicals and medicines.
Including, and this is critical, highly lethal substances.
This proximity to poisons is going to become a huge point of concern later on.
And the second outsider is Dr. Bauerstein.
A very clever London specialist, a renowned expert on poisons, who just so happens to be staying in the village for a rest cure.
How convenient.
Right. And the sources make a point of noting that he is a great friend of Mary's, that's John Cavendish's wife, which kind of hints at these other social connections and, maybe some underlying conflicts within the Cavendish marriage.
So all these tensions, they just boil over dramatically. Just 2 days before the tragedy on July 16th.
This is the moment, the critical moment where Mrs. Inglethorpe loses her main shield, her protector.
Because Evelyn Howard finally confronts her. What exactly was said in that argument?
Oh, it was explosive. Miss Howard just spoke with brutal honesty. She accused Alfred of being a bad lot and flat out says he would as soon murder you in your bed as look at you.
I mean, that is a direct, unambiguous warning of murder.
You can't get much clearer. But Mrs. Inglethorpe, completely blinded by her attachment, immediately defends her darling Alfred and, in a fit of rage, orders Miss Howard out of the house.
So Evie, the one person who is actively warning the victim, is forcefully kicked out.
But before she goes, she makes this dire appeal to Hastings. She begs him to keep your eyes open and specifically to watch that devil, her husband.
She also tells Hastings not to trust anyone else, right? She calls all the family members sharks, all of them just angling for the old woman's money.
And this is where the plot gets really subtle. Evie Howard doesn't just give a vague warning. She plants a very specific, very damaging seed of infidelity.
Ah, the affair.
She suggests Alfred is having an affair with Farmer Rake's pretty young wife, Mrs. Rake's, a gypsy-type woman.
Whom John and Hastings had just recently seen.
Exactly. And this rumor is absolutely calculated. As we're going to see, it plays a massive role in misdirecting the entire household's emotional focus. It's a brilliant piece of misdirection.
Okay, so we have established the pressure cooker of Styles Court. Let's pivot now to the timeline of the attack itself. We're focusing on the evening of Tuesday, July 17th.
And Mrs. Inglethorpe is already highly agitated. She's had the explosive fight with Evie the day before, and then, as we learned later, another conflict that very afternoon.
So her routine was already kind of thrown off.
Completely. The evening started with an entertainment where she recites a war poem, probably a distraction from her own turmoil. Afterwards, she stays up late writing letters, retires to her boudoir, and asks for her usual nightcap.
Coffee.
And according to the initial reports, Alfred Inglethorpe is the one who pours it and delivers it to her.
Okay, so he's the last one with the potential murder weapon.
Seemingly. Mrs. Inglethorpe was then seen carrying the coffee cup, which was, and this is a critical distinction, as yet untasted. She takes it into her room before she finally goes to bed.
So the poison vector, the coffee, is in her possession, but she hasn't drunk it yet.
Exactly. That same evening, we have some very strange comings and goings. Dr. Bauerstein, our poison expert, arrives late.
Right. He says he fell into a pond while he was out looking for ferns, and he's covered in mud.
He's an unwelcome late guest, but his presence is noted. And then Inglethorpe creates his alibi.
He leaves with Bauerstein, claims he forgot his latchkey, and says he'll just stay the night at a friend's place, Denby's.
His absence from the house that night immediately creates this intense complication and, of course, focuses all the initial suspicion right on him.
The alarm is finally raised in the middle of the night. Hastings is woken up by Lawrence,
who reports that Mrs. Inglethorpe is very ill, but has, for some reason, locked herself in her room.
And this is the classic locker room mystery setup.
It is, but with a modern twist. They find the main door is locked or bolted from the inside. They check Alfred's adjoining room. It's empty. The bed is untouched. And the connecting door from his room,
also locked from the inside.
And even the door that connects to Cynthia's room, which is in the opposite wing, they check it, and it is firmly bolted. No way in.
So, how do they get in?
After a lot of struggling, John, Lawrence, and Hastings finally burst through the connecting door from Alfred's empty room.
And the scene is just one of absolute horror.
Mrs. Inglethorpe is on the bed, just racked by these violent convulsions. She had managed to overturn her bedside table, scattering everything, her reading lamp, books, a set of keys,
And that crucial coffee cup.
and that coffee cup. The physical symptoms are described as incredibly specific and, frankly, terrifying.
The sources say the convulsions were terrible to behold, marked by her body arching in this peculiar fashion.
Even to a layman like Hastings, these symptoms are just screaming that this is not a natural death.
Then Dr. Bowerson shows up again, just in the nick of time.
It's his second timely appearance. He just happens to be near the lodge gates as a car is being sent for the local doctor, Dr. Wilkins. He rushes in, takes one look, sees the terrifying tetanic spasms, and immediately starts artificial respiration.
But before she completely loses consciousness, she manages that one devastating utterance.
She fixes her eyes on the doctor, cries out in this strangled voice, "Alfred! Alfred!" and then she falls back motionless.
Wow. I mean, that's a deathbed accusation.
It seems like it. The initial conclusion from the local family doctor, Dr. Wilkins, is that it was a heart seizure due to overwork. He says nature rebelled.
But Bowerstein, the specialist, he knows better.
He objects immediately. He points out that convulsions were quite tetanic in character. He insists on a post-mortem.
Which confirms it.
It confirms death by strychnine poisoning. And the dose was massive, lethal, not less than 3/4 of a grain, maybe even more.
And just like that, the case is crystallized. Inglethorpe's absence, his suspicious behavior, his financial motive, and his wife's dying words pointing directly at him.
The initial facts are stacked a mile high against the opportunist husband.
And this overwhelming set of initial facts is precisely why a detective like Poirot is needed.
Right. Hastings knows his friend is living nearby as a refugee.
A Belgian refugee living quietly in a place called Leastways Cottage.
So he summons him immediately, and Poirot arrives, ready to impose order on all of this chaos.
And his arrival immediately sets the tone for the entire investigation. He lays out his core philosophy for Hastings.
He warns him against that natural human tendency to just dismiss small contradictions. He emphasizes everything matters.
He gives that stark warning, right? Beware. Peril to the detective who says, "It is so small, it does not matter, it will not agree, I will forget it, that way lies confusion."
I love that. He starts by challenging all the basic assumptions. His very first question seems totally irrelevant.
"You have not told me if Mrs. Inglethorpe ate well last night."
Hastings just dismisses this. He said she'd lost her appetite from being upset. But for Poirot, the digestive tract matters. If she'd eaten a big meal, the absorption of the poison would be slower.
But since she had a light meal, the poison would strike faster and harder.
Precisely. And he connects this immediately to the poison vector. Since everyone is assuming the strychnine was in the coffee, Poirot notes that coffee's own bitter taste might be the only way to mask the distinctive bitterness of the strychnine itself.
Okay, so then he goes to the death chamber. And this is where the real investigation begins. He's looking for anomalies.
Things that shouldn't be there or things that are just out of place. Let's look at what he calls his 5 crucial points of interest, because they are the absolute anchors for the entire solution.
Okay, point 1. The debris from the bedside table. The lamp chimney was just broken, but the coffee cup was smashed to powder. Why would that matter? If she knocked it over, shouldn't they be broken in a similar way?
That's what you'd think. But Poirot immediately understands the destruction was deliberate. He concludes that someone stepped on it, grinding it to powder.
Someone ground it up on purpose.
Yes. And he proposes this radical idea. He says this was done either because it contained strychnine or, which is far more serious, because it did not contain strychnine.
Wait, what? Why would it be more serious if it didn't have poison?
Because if it didn't contain poison, it means the murderer destroyed the cup to hide the fact that they missed their chance to administer the dose that night, or that they used a different cup.
So this one clue just destabilizes the entire poison in the coffee story from the very beginning.
Immediately. Okay, second point. The purple dispatch case on the writing table, it's found with a key, a common Yale type, still in the lock.
And the key is noticeable because it has this twisted wire through the handle.
Right. Poirot also notices a new, bright duplicate key on Mrs. Inglethorpe's massive key bunch.
So the implication is that the original key, the one with the wire, had been lost or stolen, so she had to get a new one made.
And the fact that the key is still in the lock suggests someone recently forced it open and forgot to take the key out in their haste. Poirot takes both keys, knowing that whatever is in that dispatch case is likely central to the motive.
Okay, third point. The coffee stain.
A damp, dark brown stain on the carpet near the left window. It still smells of coffee. This just shows that coffee was spilled, maybe as she carried it from her boudoir into the bedroom.
Fourth, the minuscule textile fragment. This is classic Poirot.
This is where his meticulousness is just unmatched. He finds a minute particle, just a thread or two, of dark green fabric.
Where does he find it?
From the bolt of the door connecting to Cynthia's room. A single thread.
And this tiny detail suggests that someone pressed hard against that door bolt, leaving a trace of their clothing. It hints that the bolts weren't really a barrier.
Exactly. And the fifth major point, the one that provides the first concrete evidence of an intruder, is the large splash of white candle grease found on the floor near the writing table.
This is huge because Mrs. Inglethorpe only used an electric reading lamp.
Right. And while Lawrence uses candles, his are distinctively pink. This white grease proves, beyond a shadow of doubt, that someone entered that room carrying an unobserved external source of light.
And they were clumsy enough to drip wax while they were doing whatever they were doing.
This is the first verifiable piece of evidence that just disproves the whole isolated locked room scenario. Someone else was in there.
And the motive hunt begins almost immediately after this physical exam. Poirot finds a half-charred piece of thick paper in the grate, a fragment of a will.
And he says this is a discovery he expected.
Which connects directly to the chaos in the house.
Yes. Dorcas, the parlor maid, recounts overhearing this loud argument between Mrs. Inglethorpe and Mr. Inglethorpe on Tuesday afternoon.
And the victim was highly emotional. She said things like, "You have lied to me and deceived me. I have kept you and clothed you and fed you. My mind is made up."
And then, crucially, you need not think that any fear of publicity or scandal between husband and wife will deter me.
The word scandal is key here. It implies a moral transgression, not just a financial one.
And that leads directly to Mary Cavendish. Hastings overheard Mary demanding to see some document from Mrs. Inglethorpe, who just replied curtly, "It does not concern you in the least."
To which Mary responded bitterly, "I might have known you would shield him."
So this sets up a crucial duality for the inquest. There is clear financial and emotional motive against Inglethorpe, centered on two potential scandals, one about money and one about infidelity or some other deceit.
The whole atmosphere is just saturated with secrets, and Poirot is now perfectly positioned to exploit every single one of those lies. All right, so the official inquest, as it's detailed in our sources, it basically serves as this public stage for all the manufactured evidence to be presented.
It does. Everything seems designed to confirm what the family already suspected.
That Alfred Inglethorpe is the culprit.
Let's follow the money again for a second. Mr. Wells, who is both Mrs. Inglethorpe's lawyer and the coroner.
A bit of a conflict of interest there.
A huge one.
Yeah.
But he confirms that the primary beneficiary of her existing will, which was a year old, was John Cavendish.
But that's not the end of the will's story.
Not even close. Because Poirot introduces the twist. Using that charred fragment and the testimony of the gardener, Manning, Poirot proves that Mrs. Inglethorpe had made a new will on Tuesday afternoon around 4:30.
And this was the will that she burned.
Yes. The immediate assumption, given the argument she'd had, was that she made it to favor Alfred, maybe forgiving him or making some provision for him, and then burned it after she found out about some other deceit.
But to make it even more confusing, another will, an even earlier one, is found hidden in her boudoir desk.
A will made before she ever married Alfred. And this one, surprisingly, left her entire fortune to Alfred Inglethorpe.
So the sheer number of contradictory wills just clouds the financial motive completely. It's a mess.
A total mess. But the physical evidence seems much simpler and far, far more damning.
Mace's testimony.
Albert Mace, the local chemist's assistant. He testified that on Monday, July 16th, Alfred Inglethorpe walked into his shop, purchased a lethal dose of strychnine, and signed the poison register.
And his excuse was?
That it was to poison a dog.
I mean, that's conclusive proof of possession and opportunity right there.
It seems to be. Inglethorpe's defense, however, introduced the first major crack in the case. He denied the purchase completely. He claimed the signature in the register was a forgery.
Did he have proof?
He produced a sample of his genuine handwriting, which was utterly dissimilar to the one in the register.
Which immediately suggests a high level of pre-planning. This isn't a simple crime of passion.
This points to a professional operation. And his conduct during the inquest was just astonishingly unhelpful to his own case. He refused to provide an alibi for Monday evening.
He just said he was out walking.
Vaguely.
Yeah.
And he flatly denied having that loud argument with his wife on Tuesday.
So why refuse to give an alibi if he had one? It just makes him look so much more guilty.
That is the pivotal psychological manipulation we have to get to later. But for now, he provides a counter theory for his wife's dying words.
The Alfred utterance.
He suggests that Mrs. Inglethorpe, suffering these violent convulsions and in the dim light, mistook Dr. Bauerstein, who had a similar height, build, and crucially a big black beard, for her husband.
So her words were an appeal for help, not an accusation.
That's his argument. It's a plausible, if desperate, defense.
And the testimony gets even more confusing with this tonic theory.
Right. Lawrence Cavendish, drawing on his brief time as a medical student, suggested that his mother's death might have been accidental.
Maybe a cumulative effect of the strychnine tonic she was taking, or a simple overdose.
It's a desperate red herring. Dr. Wilkins dismisses it immediately as ridiculous. He confirms she would have needed to drink nearly the whole bottle of tonic to ingest the amount of poison that was found.
So just mentioning it keeps the idea of accidental poisoning alive in the public mind.
Exactly. And then we have Mary Cavendish, who remains the most difficult witness to read.
She claims she heard the table fall from her room at 4:30 in the morning, but then she says she remembers nothing about that loud, dramatic quarrel on Tuesday afternoon.
Only admitting to hearing a mention of scandal between husband and wife.
Poirot sees right through that.
Immediately. It is impossible to ignore that kind of shouting match. Mary is clearly shielding someone, or she's actively lying to obscure her own movements or what she knows. Her secretive behavior is a powerful secondary mystery.
And finally, a tiny clue about the coffee cups.
A very tiny clue. Poirot noticed that Cynthia Murdoch did not take sugar in her coffee, yet the cup he analyzes, which he suspects belonged to her, contained sugar.
So that inconsistency is critical for Poirot.
It suggests that the coffee service setup, the physical evidence, was either tampered with or deliberately confused. And given that Cynthia works in a dispensary,
it raises the chilling possibility that she was the intended target, or maybe the intended executioner.
And this is why Poirot becomes so intensely focused on identifying the location of every single coffee cup that was served that night.
Okay, so this is where we shift from analyzing all the clues to the actual revelation. Poirot has now collected enough conflicting evidence. The forgery, the multiple wills, the candle grease, that thread from the locked door, to realize that the case against Alfred Inglethorpe is just. It's too convenient.
It's too perfect.
Right.
Poirot's deduction is that the evidence was too conclusive and had been deliberately manufactured. The murderer wanted the police, the coroner, the public, everyone to believe that Alfred Inglethorpe bought the poison, had the motive, and did the deed in a very straightforward way.
And the reason Inglethorpe refused to provide his alibi at the inquest, that incredible risk he took.
It was a calculated, brilliant, and deeply arrogant legal strategy. Poirot finds an impeachable alibi for Inglethorpe.
What was it?
On Monday, July 16th at 6 p.m., Inglethorpe was 2.5 miles away, escorting Mrs. Raikes home from a neighboring farm.
Confirming the exact rumor that Evie Howard had planted.
Exactly. He was physically incapable of buying the strychnine at Mises' shop at the time that was stated.
So, he manufactured the evidence against himself. Why would anyone do that?
He wanted to be arrested. The goal was to submit to the trauma of an arrest and a trial, and then, at the most opportune moment, produce his ironclad alibi, be acquitted, and walk away completely immune.
Double jeopardy.
As Poirot emphasizes, citing the legal principle, a man once acquitted can never be tried again for the same offense. Once he was cleared, he could inherit his wife's fortune via that pre-marriage will they found at the desk and be legally untouchable forever.
That is an incredible gamble with the legal system itself. The sheer confidence required to weaponize the justice system against itself is just breathtaking.
It's astounding.
But if Inglethorpe didn't buy the poison, who did? And who created that false trail that was meant to point towards John Cavendish?
That leads us to the purchase of the disguise. Poirot discovers evidence of a purchase made specifically to create a distraction. He finds a new black beard trimmed to look exactly like Inglethorpe's recognizable one.
And a crucial piece of packaging.
A brown paper label addressed to L. Cavendish, Esquire, from Parkson's Theatrical Costumiers.
L. Cavendish. Lawrence. Not John.
The intention was likely to frame John Cavendish by forging his handwriting on the poison register, but the package went to the wrong brother, Lawrence. This suggests the conspirators weren't intimately familiar with the family's mail habits.
And the true accomplice in this whole scheme, the mastermind behind the chemical method and the disguise.
Is Evelyn Howard, the factotum who was supposedly protecting Mrs. Inglethorpe.
Of course.
It turns out Miss Howard and Alfred Inglethorpe are in fact cousins, which explains their secret communication. They have a slight physical resemblance, and Miss Howard has a deep, somewhat masculine voice.
So but if that strychnine was just fake evidence, where did the real poison come from? We know the lethal dose was over 3/4 of a grain.
The real poison came from the most innocent source imaginable, the patient's own medication.
No way.
A strychnine that killed Mrs. Inglethorpe was the identical strychnine prescribed by Dr. Wilkins in her harmless daily tonic.
The brilliance here is just astounding. They turn the medicine into the murder weapon. How did they concentrate a lethal dose out of a therapeutic one?
This is the chemical genius of the conspiracy, and it points directly to Miss Howard's knowledge, which she possibly gleaned from her doctor father or from closely studying Cynthia's dispensary books. The method is called bromide precipitation.
Okay, break that down for us.
Strychnine is administered as a salt, strychnine sulfate, which is dissolved in the tonic. Miss Howard knew that if you introduce a bromide, a common substance, you could get it from another medication, or even just as a salt into that tonic mixture. It reacts with the strychnine salt.
And what happens when the bromide is introduced? Give me that analogy we talked about.
Okay, think of the strychnine as tiny, scattered grains of sand dissolved in a glass of water. It's clear, it's mixed evenly, and it's harmless in a small dose. When Miss Howard added the bromide, it acted like a chemical glue.
So it caused all those separate strychnine particles to clump together.
And precipitate, meaning they clumped up and settled at the very bottom of the bottle as an insoluble solid, a thick sludge of poison.
So instead of being evenly distributed throughout the tonic, this massive lethal concentration of strychnine was just hidden at the bottom, waiting.
Exactly. And the murderer relied on a fatal habit of the household. The person who usually poured the medicine was habitually careful not to shake the bottle,
To make sure the medicine was clear and looked okay to drink.
which ensured that Mrs. Inglethorpe would continue to take harmless, clear doses for days, while that lethal dose just accumulated at the bottom. The ultimate plan was for her to swallow nearly the entire amount of collected precipitate in the last dose.
When the bottle was empty.
Right, and this is where the timing slip-up saved the entire case. The dose was intended to be taken on Monday night.
But Mrs. Inglethorpe delayed taking that final fatal dose by 24 hours because of the entertainment and dining out.
And that 24-hour delay was the window Poirot needed. If she had died on Monday, the investigation would have focused entirely on the poison bought at Mace's, the forgery, and John Cavendish.
And the complex chemical method would have been missed completely.
Utterly.
So we have solved the crime and the method, but there is still this immense psychological drama to unpack. Let's start with the complex timeline of Tuesday afternoon. We know Mrs. Inglethorpe had 2 scandals that day. What was the exact sequence of her discoveries?
The timeline is absolutely crucial for understanding the motive and the destruction of evidence. So first, around 4 p.m., Mrs. Inglethorpe argues fiercely with John. This, the first scandal.
Which was likely financial or centered on that rumored affair with Mrs. Rakes that Evie Howard had planted.
Right. In her agitation, she makes that new will, the one cutting John out, which was witnessed by Manning and Earl.
And the second scandal.
Between 4:30 and 5, she makes her fatal mistake. She opens Alfred's dispatch case or his desk, maybe just looking for stamps, or maybe looking for evidence related to that first quarrel.
And instead she finds
An incriminating letter written by Alfred Inglethorpe to Miss Howard. This was the second, deeply personal scandal proof that her husband and her most trusted companion were not only conspiring against her, but were actively planning her murder.
that discovery must have been devastating.
It caused her immense distress, and it led her to immediately order a fire to be lit and to burn the new will she had just made.
And that letter, that must have been the smoking gun. What did it actually say?
Poirot later meticulously pieced the fragments together. It confirmed the entire plot. It said, "Dearest Evelyn, you will be anxious at hearing nothing. It is all right, only you will be tonight instead of last night."
Tonight instead of last night? That explains the 24-hour delay.
Exactly. And then on the final line, that idea of yours about the bromides was a stroke of genius.
So Alfred Inglethorpe knew the letter was there and he needed to get it back immediately.
Absolutely. Realizing the devastating nature of that letter, Inglethorpe risked everything. He forced the lock on the dispatch case to find it and destroy it,
But he was interrupted.
most likely by John and Mr. Wells discussing the newly made will. In his frantic haste, he didn't have time to burn it completely, so he tore it up and hurriedly rolled the pieces into spills.
Spills? What are those?
They're small, twisted paper tubes used for lighting fires or pipes, and he hid them in plain sight in a vase on the mantelpiece.
And here we have the truly classic Poirot moment, the one that relies entirely on observation and routine. How did he find those letter pieces that secured the conviction?
Poirot had meticulously straightened all the ornaments on the mantelpiece during his first visit to the room. When he came back for a second visit, he noticed the ornaments were slightly out of order again.
Meaning someone had been there between his visits.
Someone had been searching that area. That small anomaly, the fact that an ornament had been moved by someone other than the fastidious Poirot, led him directly to the torn-up letter inside the spill vase.
That is incredible. The tiny, seemingly irrelevant details. The white candle grease, the green thread, the straightening of the ornaments. That is what unravels this perfect, complex plan.
Always.
Now we have to address the complicated lies of Mary Cavendish. Why was she lying at the inquest, and what was her secret mission that night?
Poirot uses the white candle grease and the green fabric thread to expose her. The grease proves she was carrying a white candle. The green thread matches a thread from her land armlet, a piece of clothing she wore. This proves Mary was in Mrs. Inglethorpe's room when the alarm went off.
But why? If she wasn't the murderer, what was she doing in a locked room in the middle of the night?
Her motive was driven by her failing marriage and her pride. She had entered via Cynthia's room, after unbolting the connecting door, to steal what she mistakenly believes was the document proving John's infidelity with Mrs. Raikes.
The scandal that Evie Howard so carefully planted. She was trying to get proof that her husband was cheating.
Or perhaps to protect him from a public scandal. She only found the key to the dispatch case, which she pocketed.
And to make sure her passage through Cynthia's room was quiet, she took a pretty drastic step.
A very drastic step.
Yeah.
Mary confessed that she had drugged Cynthia's coffee with a strong sleeping draught earlier that evening.
Which explains why Cynthia slept so soundly, why the door was rebolted, and why the extra coffee cup, Cynthia's drugged one, the one Poirot noticed had sugar in it, was missing.
Exactly. Mary removed it after drugging the girl to prevent anyone from discovering the sleeping powder.
This also clarifies Lawrence's intense fear and his insistence on that tonic theory at the inquest.
Lawrence was completely undone by the coincidence of the crime. He was deeply in love with Cynthia. He knew she had access to poisons and the chemical knowledge for the bromide method. She had even joked about how easy it would be to accidentally poison someone.
So he thought she was the poisoner?
He believed she was the poisoner, or at least involved. His panic, his insistence on an accidental overdose, his general nervousness, it was all an effort to shield Cynthia from suspicion.
So when Poirot later sends him that cryptic message, find the extra coffee cup and you can rest in peace.
It was his way of assuring Lawrence that the real culprit was elsewhere and that Cynthia was innocent.
And the root of the marital disharmony between John and Mary, it was all just pride and misunderstanding.
Their unhappiness was entirely internal. John loved her, but he sensed she didn't feel the same way early in the marriage, so he withdrew into silence and country life.
And Mary's love finally awoke, but her fierce pride stopped her from showing it.
Which led to her very public flirtation with Dr. Bauerstein, a desperate attempt to get a reaction from John, or maybe punish him, that only masked her true feelings.
So as the curtain falls on the investigation, we find out that Dr. Bauerstein, the expert on poisons, was arrested briefly, but not for murder.
Correct. His intense curiosity and secretive nature were actually tied to espionage. He was arrested for being 4 miles from the coast in a restricted area, suspected of being a German spy during wartime.
But he was acquitted of the spy charge. He was just an innocent, if highly suspicious, red herring in the murder case.
Completely.
And John Cavendish, the innocent beneficiary of the old will, he's actually brought to trial.
He is, because of the overwhelming manufactured evidence and his own unconvincing, desperate alibi, which involved a forged anonymous note he had written himself. He was only acquitted due to Poirot's timely presentation of the truth about the Inglethorpe and Howard conspiracy.
And this brings us to the deepest, most ethically challenging part of the whole investigation.
It does. Poirot intentionally let John be arrested. He let him endure the trauma of a high-profile murder trial. He manipulated the timeline, ensuring John faced public accusation and judicial peril.
Why would a man so obsessed with order and truth compromise the immediate clarity of justice in that way?
Because Poirot recognized that John and Mary's relationship was just paralyzed by their pride and misunderstanding. He believed that the shared danger, the public spectacle, and the threat of John's execution was the only catalyst strong enough to break the pride of both of them,
And force their true feelings to the surface.
bringing them back together and thus securing a woman's happiness. He used the trial as a psychological tool for marital reconciliation.
So we've unraveled a case that was just truly multi-layered. It required specialized pharmaceutical knowledge, that bromide precipitation, combined with audacious legal manipulation, complex stagecraft, and cunning deception. The conspiracy was almost flawless.
It survived only because of tiny slips in timing and presentation. The overarching takeaway for you, the learner, is to never trust the obvious narrative, especially one that is too conclusive. Every established fact, like Mace's testimony or Alfred's clear financial motive, was engineered to create a powerful but entirely false story.
The genius of Poirot is in his relentless, almost religious focus on the paltry little details.
The white candle grease, the small discrepancy of sugar in coffee, the specific date on a hidden letter, the faint green thread. Those tiny anomalies are always the keys to the truth.
It shows us that in any situation, the perfect scheme always generates imperfections at the margins. But let's end with that powerful, provocative thought about the detective himself. We've established that Hercule Poirot, a man whose entire philosophy is built on objective order, logic, and truth, actively chose to let an innocent man face the trauma, public disgrace, and the literal threat of execution in a murder trial.
He prioritized a subjective, emotional outcome, securing a couple's reconciliation over immediate, objective legal clarity.
So, for a mind that is so dedicated to logic, does prioritizing a woman's happiness ever justify manipulating the process of justice? That is the ultimate ethical enigma left behind by the events at Styles Court.
Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into deception and discovery.
We'll catch you next time.